Welcome to Spiritual Cartel's Principles Meeting. Tonight we are looking at Principle 12, which is service. And this week I am pleased to introduce young L, who has kindly agreed to come and share for us. So, Young, it's over to you, brother.
Thank you, Jason, and thank you, Spiritual Cartel, for inviting me back. Hi, everyone. My name's Young. I'm a very grateful recovered addict. Beyond grateful to be alive. Beyond grateful to be alive today because I shouldn't be. I should be 6 foot under. And so I'm truly grateful for the guys in Cocaine Anonymous and other fellowships that I go to for showing me the way out of hell. My sobriety date is Christmas Eve 2018. My home group is the Unshakable Foundation. We meet online every Tuesday, 8 p.m. UK time, 3 p.m. Eastern time. So yeah, I've been asked to speak about service, but before I do, I'll very quickly qualify myself. I was a drug addict and alcoholic of the hopeless variety. I didn't know what I suffered from for years. I went into many treatment centres, hospitals, detoxes, psychiatric units. And every time I came out of one of those places, I was absolutely baffled why I kept picking up again and again and again. After my life was burnt to the ground, my head would twist, tell me it'd be different this time. And I was thinking, I was in meditation earlier on. When I used to go to those early meetings, it was those guys who were bringing the meetings into treatment centres and detoxes and other institutions that I was in. They were doing service, but I had no idea. I just thought these meetings just magically happened. And even when I was coming into your meetings and using and stealing your biscuits, not just one, I was stealing packets of biscuits because I didn't have any food at home because I was a hopeless drug addict with no money, gyro junkie at the end. You still showed me kindness. You didn't kick me out of your meetings, even when you knew I was stealing. You just said things like, just keep coming back, Young. We've got a program of recovery. We have got a solution if you want it. I thought I wanted it, but I didn't want it. I wasn't willing to launch myself into this vigorous program of action to try and get connected to God or spirit and to have a life of service, because that's what I've signed up for. Today, I know I've got a debt that I can never pay back to this fellowship. My life has been I've been raised from the dead. And I think God or spirit was always trying to give me a nudge for many years. The last 7 years of my using and my drinking, I didn't want to use or drink. I'd lost the power of choice. And I remember those times when I was sat in that crack house, you know, on my hands and knees, looking for grains of drugs on the floor. And I looked up on the ceiling and someone had wrote in blood, help me. God was trying to give me a nudge, trying to wake me up, saying, have you had enough yet? When I was on my hands and knees on my estate, getting dog ends, you know, to roll a cigarette. Have you had enough, Young? Still, my self-will was so strong. Maybe it will be different this time. Maybe I can sort it out. Maybe I've had enough pain. But what I do know, that this illness untreated is like the Terminator. It doesn't give up on me. And maybe there's some newcomers and you can relate to this. It just keeps on chasing me. Wherever I run, wherever I hide, it eventually always finds me. It's a very patient disease, patient illness. So my drug using took me to places where I shouldn't have been. Every single one of us in here is pure goodness. You know, at the root of my problem, I discovered through taking these 12 steps, I discovered it wasn't drugs, it wasn't alcohol. That was just the solution to my life. That was the solution to my sobriety. That was the solution to life feeling really spiky and me feeling like a piece of whatever. No, the root of my problem was selfishness, self-centeredness, the root of my problem. But at the root of me is goodness. It was just so far hidden from so many years of using and drinking and having such low self-esteem and being a thief, a cheat, a criminal. Not being there for my children, not because I didn't want to be there. I didn't have the power to be there, because I'm going to talk about service. I had one master for decades. I used from the age of 11 to 43. 20 of those years, heroin, crack, alcohol. The substance is really not important. If you're here today because when you stop, you can't stay stopped permanently, or when you start, you don't know how much, you're in the right place. It doesn't matter what you took or how much. We know that, right? My master was king alcohol, king heroin, king cocaine, king pills, blah, blah. And that's my master. I'm a servant to that. That's the only thing I'm doing service to, because when it calls, I've got no choice but going. So I think about the guys that carried this message to me. They were doing service. The guys who are sharing a message on the meeting, not sharing a big mess and just talking about their drug use for 30 minutes and then at the end saying, I'm well now. No, the ones who had this thing about them in the rooms. And then later on in the Zooms, but when I first came around, it was just the rooms. And I love Zoom. I love this platform. I love the start of this meeting. I feel really fired up. I feel like Usain Bolt waiting to pounce, but I'll just pause. Because I know today the power is in the pause. And I didn't know that when I was in the madness. I didn't know that when I was in sobriety. Because I was in and out of the rooms for 10 years. So I'll share this so hopefully someone might hear my message and might not make the mistakes that I made. I only went into the rooms. I didn't work a 12-step program. I didn't get onto this spiritual path. I'll quote a bit of the book. Rarely have we seen a person fail who thoroughly follows this path. What path are we talking about? We're talking about a spiritual path. We're talking about a path of service and self-sacrifice and thinking of others. We're talking about a path of joy and peace, even when the wind starts blowing. We have a design for living here that works in rough going. And I'm just going to share what the Spirit's leading me to share. When the wind starts blowing. And I remember at the beginning of COVID, I was about a year or 2 years in by then, and I was working a program. So my first thought, and this isn't from me, because I'm selfish, self-centered. My first thought was, how are we going to reach the newcomer? And then my second thought was, oh, my auntie, she's on her own. She's got Alzheimer's. So I rushed down there. And this does relate to service. So I rushed down there. And I had to watch her deteriorate. But what amazing thing happened then? This amazing thing called Zoom came. So I think about that 4 months I was living with her, looking after her, cooking for her every night and caring for her. Very challenging. The wind was blowing. But I was spending almost all my time taking people through the work, in prayer, in meditation, and looking after someone in service. Because when I think of service today, it's not just service to my fellow drug addict or alcoholic, which is a massive, important part of my life. Am I practicing these principles in all my affairs? And I remember, I had to bathe her and all these things that I can't do as a normal human without help. Without help, it's too much for me. But there is one that has all power that was helping me along in those difficult moments. Challenging. But even in those challenging moments, I remember one day I was upstairs and I was looking out of the window. And this feeling came over me. And I thought, this is one of the happiest moments of my life. And as I share that with you, I look back. Why was that? Because I was thinking of someone else before me. I was being kind to someone without wanting anything in return. I was being kind to this lady who took me in when I was 17, when everyone else had left me, when I was really messed up on a lot of drugs, and showed me love and kindness. I was able to pay that back finally, because now I was clean and sober and I had a spirit of goodness in my soul. And what I do know today is I'd been a seeker all my life. I just didn't know it. I'd been a seeker all my life. I just didn't know it. I thought I needed to be happy. I needed this. I needed you. I needed drugs. I need something to feel complete. I had this spiritual void in my soul. I feel whole today. I feel whole today. And when she died, and when I watched that lady die, I could feel sadness. I could feel confusion. I could feel this is unfair. And then I went into prayer and I phoned my sponsor and I said, what should I do? And he said, go and help someone young. And I know that's always the answer today. But I'm saying this to anyone who might be going through some difficult moment with a loved one or relative. Today, I know that I don't know. I don't know why that happened to her. Maybe it happened to her so that I could spend the final days of her life with her and I could be present. Maybe, who knows? I don't know. My point in that story is that taught me a great lesson in service. When my thought is constantly of others, I just feel like I'm in the flow of life, even when life's challenging. Because I think about the step-free prayer, where it says, relieve me of the bondage of self, so I can better do your will. The bondage of self, bondage meaning slavery. I know that I was a slave to my thinking, even this morning, but I've got a program today. I had some fear come into my head, but if I don't have a program, I am so consumed with me. What do I sound like? What do these guys think about me? What am I saying? Do they like me? I just have this constant dialogue in my head when I'm not connected to spirit. If I'm not connected to spirit or to God, I'm just connected to that. And the main problem of me, the drug addict, centers in my mind. In my mind. And then if I've got this darkness in my mind, it affects my soul. When I came into the room of Cocaine Anonymous, my soul was broken into a million pieces. And it was almost like I was on my hands and knees searching, trying to put them back together. But I just cause absolute calamity when I'm trying to do that. Left to my own devices, I look back at the history of my life. Burnt it to the ground many times over. But it's not like that today. Thank God. Anyone new in, we've got absolute freedom waiting for you, if you want it. So when I came in this time around, I was dragged to this point of surrender. No longer was I arguing with you guys when you talked about God or spirit. No longer was I arguing about you guys when you said, why don't you do the steps? No longer was I arguing with you guys when you said, we can show you how we have recovered. Because before I'd say, yeah, but I'll do that, but I'm not doing that. Step 4, no. Finally, my ears opened. I think I was given a moment's grace. A moment's grace. Thank you, God. And so I jumped through it. And when I met that beautiful man who was my sponsor, who I heard him share on a meeting, and he had this thing about him. He had this look in his eyes. He had this gentleness. He had this humility. And I saw how he acted outside the rooms, because when I'm talking about service, it's about my attitude as well. Am I bringing an attitude of goodness and humility? And am I willing to go to those any lengths to help the still suffering, or just to help anyone? My old self, it was all about me. I'm not going to help you. I'm going to rob you. I'm going to take. But when I take from you, I'm taking from me, and I'm taking from my soul. Because this whole thing is about connecting, getting connected to the one, so that I can feel connected to you. How do I know we're all connected? We're all connected on this meeting. I know. How do I know that? Because if I'm being nasty to you, if I'm being horrible to you, I don't feel good, because I'm being horrible to me. Relating to service, when I'm being kind and good to you, I'm being kind and good to me. I know we're all connected today. I know that I have to stay connected today. And I feel very connected to you. I can love you today without wanting anything back off you. That was an alien concept to me. Whenever I did something nice for someone, it was because I had an ulterior motive. But you guys have shown me a different path. By your example, by your walk, by your talk, by your actions, not your words. Because I could quote the big book all day long and try and sound clever, but am I living this life? Am I living a life of service? Am I a humble messenger? Do I know that I'm no better or no worse than anyone else on this meeting? Do I understand that I'm perfectly imperfect? and being okay with that, being more than okay with that. So when I came in this time around and all, all the stuff, got a sponsor, worked through the steps. And I remember my sponsor at the beginning, and it's the same what I say to my guys. I'm not taking a sponsee through this work. I'm taking a future sponsor. We teach so people can teach, and they can teach, and they can teach. So we can help people. So people don't have to suffer. So people can be free. Not only that, though, those that continue to seek on this path find something beyond. I've found something beyond anything I could ever imagine. I can't believe it. I cannot believe. I feel like the luckiest man in the world. When I think about where I've come from, when I think about not eating for 4 days at a time and going to food banks and doing terrible things for money, I feel like the luckiest man. I was going to say boy then, but I'm too old for that. So my sponsor said to me, right, he talked about work in a program. I said, what does that mean, work in a program? He said, well, one of the things is you're going to go on a big book study. You're going to go through the 12 steps. You're going to get service. You're going to develop a prayer and meditation life. He took me to those pages, I think 86, 87, those step 11 disciplines almost straight away. But I wasn't up step 11 yet. But he said, your problem is lack of power. That's why you keep on picking up. That's why you're unhappy. That's why you're a lost soul. That's why you keep on seeking for something that's burning your life to the ground. So if that's your problem, young, let's get you hooked up to power. And I said, I've never prayed. And then I thought that was a lie. When I had a knife to my throat quite a few times over drug deals, etc., I always, God, please help me. But yet I didn't believe in God. When my dad was dying, God, I don't want him to. I always asked for God when there was nowhere else for me to go. And such it was when I came into these rooms. So I got my first bit of service. And it was making tea or coffee. And first of all, I didn't want to do it. Because when I first came in, I still felt really spiky. I'd just taken the love of my life, alcohol and drugs, out of my system, and I wasn't bouncing around all happy. I had a frown on my face. I used to be a very angry man. You could look at me the wrong way and that's what I used to be. That seems to have been removed magically. I can't believe it. So I didn't want to do it, but do you know what? I thought to myself, my sponsor's really well. He's been around a long time and I want what he's got. I want to be free. I want that look that he's got in his eyes. And so it made sense to me to do the things he was doing. But being the addict that I am, I thought, I'm going to do more than he does. So I started making tea or coffee in this meeting. I wanted to be the last one in the meeting and the first one out. That's how I rolled before. So I wasn't part of. I was just sat in a meeting. I wasn't part of it. But this time, my first bit of service, making tea or coffee, I started meeting those guys who were well, who were on fire, who were enthusiastic about this 12-step program and a spiritual life. They all talked about God, spirit, 12 steps, helping others. And they installed something in me. Each one of their conversations, it was almost like feeding me with goodness. It was feeding me with goodness. And I would ask them questions. I'd feel like a sponge. What does this step mean? How do you pray? How do you meditate? I remember saying to one of them, I can't meditate. I've tried it. And he said, Young, the thing in this program is about persistence and consistency. He said, I couldn't meditate when I first started. But when I used to ride a bike with stabilizers, I couldn't do that either when my dad took the stabilizers off. But after a bit of practice, you just get into the flow. And so that bit of service was absolutely invaluable for me. And then after my sponsor took me through the 12 steps, and he stressed to me, he said, Young, these 12 steps are a lifetime of practice, a lifetime of practice in these spiritual disciplines of 10, 11, and 12. We could throw 6 and 7 in there, could throw 3 in there. Lifetime of practice, that's my point. Lifetime of practice. Because I need to continue to nurture this relationship with this loving power. This loving power that feels like it's got its arms wrapped around me at all times, even when the wind's blowing. And so that bit of service and all the bits of service that I've done from that day to this, they seem to feed me with goodness. But that's not why I do them. I do them now because I love to do them. Something has shifted absolutely in my soul. This alignment. And I was talking to some of my guys today about alignment. When I'm out of alignment, if I think about a truck or a car, if its wheels out of alignment, it's a really rocky journey. And such it is with life. If I'm out of alignment with God's will and doing service, it helps shift me. It helps shift my thinking, my attitude, my behavior. I feel a bit softer. I don't feel like there's a heavy load because I'm not stuck in here in my head because I'm thinking of you rather than thinking of me. And I remember my sponsor said to me one day, Young, what you want doesn't matter. And I thought, you what? Of course it matters what I want. But then I meditated on it. And after a little bit of time, maybe a year later or half a year later, because I'm a slow learner, and this is how things often work for me. Someone, a teacher or a newcomer or someone will say something, and then I'll be in meditation months later. That's what it means. I get it today. Why does it matter what I want? When it matters what I want, I'm often in pain in there. And the main problem centers in my mind. And I don't want to be that ticking time bomb. I want to continue to grow and change and be transformed by Spirit. So after a couple of months, I'd gone through the 12 steps. And then he said to me, now go out and help someone else. And I said, ooh, I don't know anything. He said, yeah, you do. You just take them through this big book. You just phone me up if you're not sure. And so I started to do that. And then I started to shift again. My alignment changed again. My vision changed again. Seeing the lights come on in someone else's eyes started to fill me with joy. This joy that I'd never experienced before. Because I didn't want anything off this guy. I didn't have any expectations of him. Like when I go and stand by the ocean or in a forest, I feel totally at peace because I've got no expectations of that ocean or that forest. And so it is with my sponsees. And it was just amazing. And then I did it again and I did it again and I continued to do it. And then when the Zoom thing hit, there was many doubting Thomases. A lot of guys who've been around a while. This Zoom thing will never work. You can't sponsor people on Zoom. And so I sponsored my first man at Zoom right at the beginning. And I remember our first step 5. It was one of the most powerful ones I'd ever done. So I thought of that thing, contempt prior to investigation. And now the whole world was open. I didn't have to be stuck in my city just to do service. So now that changed everything. I could now help others in other countries, in other places, and do service on meetings like this or meetings it didn't matter. It didn't matter. In the 3rd step prayer, it says something like, take away my difficulties. Take away my difficulties, God. That victory over them may bear witness to those I will help. Thy power, thy love, and thy way. Those I will help. Now, can you give me a 5-minute warning, Jace? I forgot the timer, man. So, not only of you beautiful people, and I mean that, you beautiful people, you've shown me the way out of hell. You've shown me the way onto a life that I could never imagine, a spiritual life. A life of peace and joy and calmness. But and I often share this. You've shown me the secret to life itself. The secret to life. And the secret to life is being useful, being of service, having a life of service. That's the secret to life. Because the more I think of you, the more service I do, the more peace I feel in my soul. Happiness just comes as a byproduct of that. Not trying to play the director and create happiness, and I need you to love me, and no. Something just flows into me. The Spirit, this goodness, just through helping others. Who would have known? I wouldn't have known. I wasn't helping anyone. Someone asked me this question the other day. They said, Young, do you ever feel any regret and remorse over all those drugs you sold to those drug addicts? Because, you know, about 7 years before I got clean, I was working for a Bengali drug gang selling heroin and crack cocaine on the streets of Bethnal Green in East London. And he asked me that question. And do you know what? I'd never thought about it. And I answered, I said, no, I don't. And he looked at me like shocked, like, you heartless mother. I said, firstly, I never made anyone buy those drugs off me, but maybe this is my amends now. I spend a lot of my time helping other drug addicts and alcoholics. Maybe that is without me even thinking about it. Maybe that is without me thinking about it. So going back to service. So I remember I was in my local city before Zoom. I think it was before Zoom. And I was moaning to my sponsor about the meetings. Oh, everyone's talking about their dogs and their shopping. No one's talking about the solution. Blah, 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 blah. You know, I was going through that kind of phase of, you know, pointing the finger. You should do it like this. You should do it like this. And he said, just set up meetings then. Stop talking about it, Young, and do something. If you don't like them, create the fellowship you crave. So that's what I started to do. I started to set up meetings, and then other people would, you know, I'd roll out of service, and then they're really healthy, and then they're doing big book studies, and they talk about the steps, and people are getting well, and people are sponsoring. Because I know today, this is a spiritual program of action. Spiritual program of action. What is service but action? What is service but action? And then at the beginning of COVID, I don't think I've told this story before. I was in a hire car, and this speaker just come out of nowhere, and it happened to be Chris R from Texas. You know, a lot of you guys know Chris Raymer, right? And Peter M from Florida. Some fantastic speakers. And I was looking on my phone, and I didn't know where it was coming from. I don't, to this day, I don't know where it was coming from out of the speakers, seriously. And anyway, and I just got this intuitive thought to set up this thing called Audio Anonymous that a lot of you guys will be on. It's a WhatsApp group. We've got 7 WhatsApp groups where I post a recorded share every morning. And over the years, 3 years or 4 years, it's grown to over 7,000 people. And I know it's not official, but for me, I'm doing a little bit of service by you know, putting speakers out there that are carrying this beautiful spiritual message, and people, you know, I know people say, oh, this is really helping. So it's all these kind of little things, because I think it's all the little things that make me whole. All the little things. But today, hopefully, I'm just a humble servant to God and the people around. And that's a million miles away from the person who rocked through the doors of Cocaine Anonymous. Angry, scared, broken. I called myself a serial relapser. I wasn't a serial relapser. I was just a drug addict and an alcoholic without a solution. I'm going to use or drink. There's no ifs or buts. I wasn't thinking about helping anyone else. I was told this was a selfish program. Actually, nothing could be further from the truth. It's a selfless program. Like I've already said, the more I help someone, the better I feel as a byproduct, not as what I'm trying to feel better. And I share this. I share a lot of the same stuff.
I'm very annoying. I'm a very annoying person. I wake up every morning so happy. Where's that come from? Seriously, I wake up at like 4 a.m. and I'm just like, okay, God, what have you got for me today? Show me the way, God. Help me be a bit less selfish, because I'm selfish every day. I can't believe it. I used to wake up every single day for decades, just like, oh God, I just got to get through another day. Because my whole life was like a Groundhog Day. I was in the world, but I wasn't part of the world. I lived in the this lower power, because I know there's a higher power. I know there's God. I know there's spirit. It's the thing that's making these words come out of my mouth without me thinking about anything. It's the thing that's making my heart beat right now. It's the thing that's making my hands move, this power inside my soul. So there's a power, a higher one, but I believe there's a lower power. And when I'm in the madness, or when I'm sober without a spiritual solution, when I'm not doing service, I believe I'm in this lower power. I'm just consumed by myself. It's got a load of stuff in the big book, because a lot of my service is helping others, right? I'm not because I'm a saint, because I'm not. You've heard my story. I'm certainly not a saint. I do it because I love doing it. At first, when I started doing service, I did it because thank you, Jason, I was terrified of picking up again. I was terrified. And I thought, I need to go all in. And I read that thing when it says half measures avail us nothing. So I thought, I'm not going to do half measures anymore. I am all in. So at first I did service because I felt I had to do it. But then after a bit of time, I started enjoying it. And now I love it. None of this stuff feels an effort for me. And I don't say that, oh, look, no. It's just this consistency, and something, God, peace, love, light, has shifted my soul so that when I pray, I love praying. When I'm silent, I love being silent. When I'm in meditation, I love being in meditation. It doesn't seem like a chore or an effort, but it did at first. After time, something shifted. And it says in the big book about sponsorship, doesn't it? Or about helping others. It says, my very life depends on the constant thought of others, i.e. service. And it's funny, I'm doing a share on service because I read a message in some chat earlier on, and it was about to do service, H&I. And it says service is much more than just making tea or putting out chairs. There's just so much there I can do. I can always do more. Don't get me wrong, making tea, putting out anything is good. Am I walking the walk? Am I a humble servant today? Am I holding out my hand to you guys who need it and saying, I can show you the way out of hell. Hold my hand. I can show you the way out, and I can show you how you never have to go in there again. I'm just going to end with the St. Francis prayer, because for me, this sums service up. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is darkness, light. And where there is sadness, joy. Divine Master, grant that I may seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive. It is in giving that we receive. It is in pardoning that we are pardoned. And it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. I read a lot of spiritual literature today, and in not one of those books does it say that I get by taking. It always says I receive by giving. And so my experience is such today. Thank you so much for inviting me, guys. It's always such an honor and a privilege to share, and I feel very humbled today. Thank you. Much love.